In several of our previous videos, we've talked about the idea of having sprints, which can almost be considered as time-bound mini projects within a project itself. At the end of each sprint, the idea will be that the development team will demonstrate a usable version of the product based on the user stories provided in the product backlog, which will then be reviewed by the product owner, who will provide their own feedback. The process begins with the development team sitting down with the product owner face to face, with access to the actual product that they've been working on. The development team lists in turn each individual user story which forms that particular sprint as agreed with the product owner. As they list each of the user stories, they demonstrate it in the actual product itself, displaying the fact that it is complete to the product owner. If there have been any problems which have led to the non-delivery of a specific user story, the developers would also show this fact to the product owner and explain why they haven't been able to implement it. The product owner, as I mentioned, will provide feedback on each individual user story, hopefully confirming that the user story is in fact complete and meets their requirements. If any of the user stories require additional work, this can be fed back by the product owner, and that work will likely be completed during the next sprint. As this is an entire sprint review and not just a user story review, feedback is also then shared amongst all of the team members about the sprint as a whole. A common theme for this feedback is how each individual team member has communicated with each other. Communication is obviously an extremely important part of any project, and so it's common to see examples and suggestions of how communication can be improved. This feedback is then aggregated, and if any action is required, those actions will be agreed between the project manager and the product owner, as well as the rest of the team if things affect them as well. If there is another sprint after the current sprint which is being reviewed, it's commonplace for a sprint planning meeting to take place immediately after the sprint review. So for example, sprint 2 would be planned immediately after the sprint 1 review, and this process will again continue and repeat itself until all of the sprints have been exhausted. It's not common, but occasionally a problem will arise which has not been planned for. This may be something like how best to implement a user story, or whether to combine user stories into a more abstract concept in order to save time in the long run. These events are called spikes and are going to be the subject of our next video, so make sure you subscribe so that you don't miss that.